Hello everybody and welcome to the third video in this Python curses tutorial series. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about pads and windows. Now a window is something that we've already seen, but what we can do is create our own windows that are smaller and a part of the main window, and that allows us to control the text that's going in each individual window and refresh or clear each one based on what we want to do. Now, a pad is something that allows us to show a certain amount of text on the screen at a time. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'll show you an example in 1 second. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing I'll show us how to do is how to create a new window, and then we'll look at pads. So I have the same code that I had in the previous tutorial. I've just copied it in a new file. And what we're going to do now is just create a new window. So I'm actually going to take all of the stuff that I've added to the screen, and instead I'm going to add it to a window, and then that window will be a part of the screen. So the window is stationary. It stays on the screen. It's not going to move off of the main screen, and we can place stuff inside of the window. So it'll be a little bit weird to understand this, but we're going to place the window on the screen. We'll call the screen just the terminal, okay? Like the main screen that we have. And then within the window, it kind of has its own coordinates. So if I want something to be at the top left of my window, then I place it at 0, 0 in the window. That doesn't mean it's going to be at 0, 0 on the screen because the window could be placed further on the screen. So let's just look at an example, and this should hopefully clear it up. What I'm going to do is just use the same example I had before, except this time, rather than adding my count to the screen, I'm going to add it to my new window. So I'm going to say counter underscore win is equal to, and then this will be curses dot. I'm going to use the new win function. And then what I need to pass to this is the height, the width, and then the row and the column of where I want this window to be placed on my screen. Now you may have noticed by now, it's kind of weird. We're always passing the Y coordinate first and then the X coordinate. That's just the way it works for curses. So I'm going to say we want this to be maybe a height of 1, so just 1 row high, and then we'll have it be 20 characters long because we're only going to have to place count inside of here, so I don't need it to be crazy big. Then we will place this at, let's go 10, 10. So it'll be 10 rows down and then 10 columns to the right from the left-hand side of the screen. Okay, so that's our window. It's going to be stationary on the screen. It's not going to move. And then what we're going to do is rather than adding here, so rather than adding to the screen, we're going to add to the window. So I'm going to say counterWin.add string, and then I will say counterWin.refresh as well. Now I still do need to clear this window, and I do need to clear and refresh the main screen as well, which I'll show you in a second. So I'm going to say counterWin.clear. So at the beginning of our for loop, we're going to clear this. If you're unsure about how this works, I explained it in the previous tutorial. Anyways, we'll clear the window, then we'll calculate the color, we'll then add the text to the window and refresh the window, and we should be good to go. Now I'm curious what's going to happen with our screen here because I'm not refreshing or updating the screen. So let's just run it and then we can make any adjustments. So I'm going to say Python tutorial3.py, and notice we are getting this showing up completely fine. And the window is down 10 rows and then 10 columns from the left. Obviously it's flashing because we are changing the color, and then it goes away as soon as we finish the for loop. Okay, so it looks like we didn't actually need to update or clear the screen to be able to see that. That's good to know. Okay, so now we have looked at a window. Let's just see what happens if we place some other text on the screen while we have a window. So what I'm going to do is say, let's go with std screen dot and then add string. And let's just add the string hello world here, exclamation point, okay? And then we'll refresh, so std screen dot refresh like that. So I just want to show you here that when I go and I do this, this hello world text is going to stay persistently on the screen, even though, if I can kind of move over here, we're clearing the window. So what we're doing to the window is not affecting the screen. And since I'm moving around the terminal, that's why we were getting some weird output. And of course, now it's closed like all my stuff. Let's run this again. But the point is that all of my operations on the window don't affect my screen. And that's kind of the idea. If I only want to refresh, say, one piece of text, I just put it in a separate window. And that way I don't have to constantly refresh and update the screen. I just have to do it with the one window. So that's going to be more efficient. And that also means that I'm not going to potentially be messing up or removing any of the text that I want to persistently stay on the screen. Okay, so that is windows. Pretty straightforward. You can make as many windows as you want. And again, that's the point of them, is that you can refresh them independently. All right, so now that we've talked about windows, I'm going to talk about pads. Now, a pad is kind of a special type of window that allows you to have content that's overflowing off of the screen. Now, the reason you can have that is because with a pad, you can show part of the pad on the screen. Now, it's really, really cool, but you can actually kind of trim the pad and only show an aspect of it, and then pick where on the screen you want it to go, and you can move it around very, very easily. Really hard to explain. It's kind of an abstract thing. It's not usually what you think of when you think of a pad. So let me just show you an example, and then you will understand. So I'm going to delete all of this, and I'm going to create a pad. Now, to make a pad, I'm going to say pad is equal to, and then this is going to be curses.new pad. And what I need to pass is just the height and the width of this pad. So I'm going to go 100 and 100 and just make it nice and large. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this pad with a ton of content, specifically just a bunch of characters. So I'm going to say for I in range, and then this is going to be 100. I'm going to say for j in range, and then this will be 26. And the reason I'm doing 26 is I want to generate 26 characters 100 times. So I want to essentially generate every single character in the alphabet 100 times and add that into my pad. So what I'll do inside of here is say that my char is equal to, and then this is going to be the char of, and then 67 plus j. Now, you might be confused on what this is doing, but every single character on our keyboard has a unique number that represents it. So for example, uppercase A is represented by the number 67. Now we have this function in Python called char, CHR, that takes in some number and gives us the character that it represents. So when j is 0, we're going to get A. When j is 1, we are going to get B, because it follows, right? After A, we're going to have B. That's one number higher, then C, then D, so on and so forth. So that's why I'm doing this 67 plus J. So now that I have the character, let me add it to the pad. So I'm just going to say pad dot, and this is going to be add string. Then I'm going to add the character, and we could add it in a different color. So let's go with green and black. Okay, perfect. Now, one thing I'm not sure that I mentioned before is that when you add stuff to a pad consecutively, it's just going to add it where the cursor on the pad is. So you've probably seen this in the terminal, but you type, your cursor moves with what you're typing, and then wherever the cursor is where you're going to be typing next. So if I add this character, my cursor is going to go to the end of the line where this character is, or at the end of wherever the character is. So that means the next character comes after it. I'm not writing this character on top of it. For that to happen, I would have to manually put 0, 0 here. Since I'm not putting that, it doesn't mean I'm just placing it at 0, 0. It means that I'm placing it wherever the character currently is. Okay, I wanted to go over that. So now that this is in the pad, what we can do is refresh the pad. But the first thing I need to do is actually refresh the screen. So I'm going to say screen dot, and then let's just go with refresh, because we're going to add the pad, right? And then we're going to refresh the screen, or this isn't on the screen yet, but you'll see what I mean. And then we say screen.refresh. And then down here, I'm going to refresh the pad. So I'm going to say pad dot and then refresh. Now, when I refresh the pad, I actually need to pass 6 values to this. And to explain what these values are, I need to hop over to Paint. So I'm inside of Paint. You can see I have a lovely drawing here. The black box is going to represent my screen, and the green box is going to represent my pad. Now, let's say that we only want to show this area of the pad on the screen. Well, what I'm actually able to do here is when I refresh the pad, I can choose how much of the pad I want to show and where I want it to be on the screen. So the first thing that I can actually pass to my refresh is the coordinate of where I want to start showing my padded content relative to the pad. So when I say relative to the pad, that means we're going to treat 0, 0 as the top left-hand corner of the pad. Now, let me actually draw a better example here so that I can show you. So let's say we actually want to display maybe this. Okay, so if I want to display this area of the pad, then what I need to pass is this coordinate relative to here. So it would probably be something like, I don't know, I'm with my mouse, so I can't really draw it, maybe like 2 and 7 or something. That would be the coordinate that I would pass. And the point of this is I'm saying I'm going to start displaying my padded content from here. So all this stuff in this area, I'm not going to display because I'm starting to show the padded content right here. So everything to the right of that and down of that coordinate is the content I'm actually going to show. So once I pick the content in the pad that I want to show, then I need to decide how large I want the pad to be on my screen and where I want it to be located. So what I can actually do is I can pick the top left-hand corner of this padded content and the bottom right-hand corner of this padded content that I want on the screen. And I can cut off part of the content based on the coordinates that I pick. So I would have to choose a coordinate relative to the screen for the top left-hand corner of this and for the bottom right-hand corner of this. So now if my padded content is, say, let me just continue this red box, everything in the red box, so ignore the kind of dividing line, but if that's the padded content, what I can do is show, I'm trying to find another color here, like maybe only this amount of the padded content if I pick the bottom right-hand corner and the top left-hand corner to be certain values. Hopefully that makes a tiny bit of sense, but I just have to pick how much padded content I want to show and then where I want to show it on the screen, kind of the dimensions of the pad. So now that maybe clears it up, let's look at what the arguments are going to be to pad.refresh. So I'm going to pass 0, 0, 5, 5, and then 25, 75. Now what this says is I want to start my padded content at 0, 0. So pretty much all of the content I want to keep in my pad because I'm starting it right at 0, 0. Again, relative to the pad. Then the top left-hand corner of my padded content on the window, I want to be 5, 5. So I'm going to start showing it at 5, 5 on the screen. Then I'm going to end all of it at 25, 75. So I'm going to show it 25 rows down and 75 rows to the right. Let me just show you what this looks like so you get an idea, and then we'll mess around with some values. So notice that this is what we get. So I'm starting to show it at 5, 5. I started the padded content at 0, 0, so we're not cut off on the left here, and I'm going to 25, 75, okay? So we're 25 rows down, 75 rows to the right. Now let's close this, and let's look at what happens if I do 25, 25. Okay, so we change that. Let's run this, and now notice we only go this far to the right. We're showing 25 characters on the screen. Or sorry, not 25 characters, but we're going to column 25, and we're showing 25 rows. Let's hit this again. Let's change this to like 10, 25. And now let's look at this and notice we have a much smaller area. Great. Now I will change where the padded content starts. So when I change this, let's make this maybe 5, 5, you're going to see that the content inside of the pad is going to look different. So let's run this. And notice now we don't start with C, which is what we were starting with before. We have different characters because we've started the padded content at a different area. So to reiterate here, we are passing the row where we want to start showing the padded content, the column where we want to start showing the padded content, and then we're passing the row and the column where we want to display this on the window, and then the row and the column of the bottom right-hand corner of where we want to display it. So this is the top left-hand corner, this is the bottom right-hand corner. It kind of forms a rectangle, and then we display whatever content this gives us in that area. Hopefully that is clear. Yeah, that is how the refresh works. Okay, so now that we've done all of this, I'm going to show you how we can actually scroll through our padded content, which is going to look really cool. So I'm going to do another for loop here. I'm going to say for I in range, and let's just go with 50. And what I'm going to do is continually refresh the pad, and I'm going to change where I'm showing the pad. So I'm going to leave this at 0, but I'm going to put I here for the column of where I want to start showing my padded content. I'm also going to say time.sleep 0.2, just so that we have enough time to actually see this pad being refreshed. So before I even really explain this, let me just run this and show you, so then the explanation makes more sense. So look, we're actually scrolling through this content. We're continually kind of moving to the right and looking at more of it, and it's staying stationary on the screen. So this is one way that we can scroll through it. Another way that we can scroll through it is by actually moving the pad itself. That wouldn't really scroll through it, I guess, but we can move the pad too. So now, rather than doing that, so I had I in the column here. So since I was incrementing I, it was changing how much of the pad I was showing. Now we're going to move I here. So when I move I here, this is going to change the top left-hand corner of where I'm displaying this. But since I'm doing that, I also need to add I to the bottom right-hand corner so that we're going to be kind of moving a square across the screen, not the square getting smaller. I'll show you all of these examples, but this is changing the column for the, top left-hand corner and for the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, let's run this. And now notice that it's scrolling on the screen. But see that we're getting all of the previous pad like showing up on the screen still. Now the reason that's happening is because we're not clearing the screen after we move the pad. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say std screen and then dot, and this is going to be clear, and then I'm going to refresh it because of course after we clear we need to refresh, otherwise it's not actually going to do anything. So now we're going to clear the screen, refresh, and then show the pad, and then clear, refresh, and then show the pad. So let's try this now. And now you can see that we're actually kind of moving a rectangle across the screen that contains the content inside of it. So this is pretty cool. I mean, this alone can allow you to make games because you can literally, kind of move stuff around the screen in this fashion using these pads. There's a few other ways to do it, but this is probably the simplest way that I've seen. Now let's do it so that we're actually scrolling through the content while we move it to the right. So the way I'll do that is I'll put I here as well. So now I'm changing the amount of padded content. I'm changing the location of the padded content, and I guess that's all I'm doing. Okay, so let's see this now. Notice that as I move, it's kind of like I'm taking a window and moving it across my padded content because I'm getting different content inside of the pad. It's not the same content. Awesome. Now let's see if we can move it diagonally as well. So let's go like this. Let's go 5 plus I and 10 plus I. And let's look at this on the screen now, and it should go to the right and down. So yeah, we're moving it kind of diagonally. And then we got an error. Now, the reason we get an error here is because we tried to display this in an area that was invalid on the screen. So what would have happened is I would have been too large for this coordinate right here. So we would have kind of exceeded the row that we could show this out of. Sorry, it wouldn't be that coordinate. It would be this coordinate right here. So keep that in mind. You can only display in a valid area of the screen. And if you want to check the coordinates of the screen, I have a kind of cheat right here that you can use. You can use this. Curses.lines, and then this is going to be -1. I don't know why it's showing all of these characters here. And then curses.calls, -1. So this is actually how you get the coordinates of the screen. This tells you the number of rows or lines, and then the number of columns. And to get kind of the maximum one you could place them at, you just have to subtract 1 because we start counting at 0. I'm not actually going to use these. I just wanted to show you that's how you get the number of rows and columns, kind of the screen dimensions. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's just look at one more example because it's pretty cool how we can scroll, say, vertically through this content as well. So let's go back to kind of our original here. So I had that at I. Let's make that 5. Let's make that 10. Let's make that 25. So let's say we want to actually scroll the other direction. Well, if I want to scroll the other direction, all I need to do here is actually make this I. And I'll probably have to make this a bit less. Oh, no, our pad has size 100, so that's fine if I do that. Okay. Anyways, if I make this I now, so just that first coordinate, and now I run this, wait, it's scrolling in the direction. Okay, that was a little bit weird what was happening there. Let me have a look at here because that was not what I expected it to do. So to me, that kind of looked like we were scrolling horizontally when I wanted to just be scrolling vertically. So this should, in theory, be scrolling vertically, but it did look like it was going horizontally. So let me just change a few coordinates here and see if we can make this a little bit easier to see. So I'm just going to make this 0, 0, and we'll go with 20 and then 20. Now, let's see how much different this looks this time, because last time, okay, so there we go. So now it looks like it's scrolling vertically, and we're going to keep scrolling a bunch because we don't have the entire padded content filled, right? Our pad is 100 by 100. We've only probably filled like 20 or 30 lines of it, and so that's why it's like continually scrolling right now, even though there's nothing on the screen. It's still moving the pad upwards or moving the content in the pad upwards, even though we have no more content left. Okay, so let me get out of that. All right, so with that said, that's pretty much everything that I needed to show you. That was pads and windows. Pretty useful and pretty cool, especially the pad, because you can kind of scroll through it and move it around the screen. Definitely something you have to practice with. I'm no pro, as you can obviously see in this video, but hopefully I at least showed you the syntax and gave you a few examples of kind of what's possible with it. So anyways, I am going to end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another one.